So I'll just quickly take them through the slides. So we're chapter 10, Ancestor Wisdom, with Michael Rice, of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And this session is recorded and shared publicly to support others in these teachings. And I'm Yinka and I run Hear My Voice Book Club, which is an inspirational self-development. And what we've got on this week, we've got story time tomorrow for the children, children's movie night on Saturday, and 8 AM for Jodie Spencer's meditation. For those that enjoy the 5 AM club, that restarts Monday the 30th of October. And our next monthly book club is Napoleon Hill. It's going to be a mixture of Think and Grow Rich, so the focus will be money, but also Outwitting the Devil. So that's Thursday the 2nd of November. And this Monday we've got our Letting Go meditation at 8:30 as requested. And for those that normally join the Manchester in-person events, I'm stepping down and handing it over to somebody else to take over. So it will still run, but I won't be running it. Decided to put my attention in other places. And tomorrow's our final chance to book on for the Become a Supernatural weekend, which is 28th of October to the 29th. There's quite a few of us staying Friday till Monday. Yeah, and you can just message me if you want details for that. And WhatsApp group, keeping people connected. And Hear My Voice Book Club runs non-profit events, so everyone can take part regardless of your financial status. But I asked this evening, as Michael's kindly come and shared his time, of any donations to go directly to Michael to support him in these teachings as well. Or if you just want to express appreciation for his teaching tonight. So we're just going to do some shoulder rolls, loosen up, ready for Michael. So nice deep breath in, draw up the shoulders all the way to the ears. And exhale, to bring your shoulders back and down. Nice deep breath in. And exhale. One more time, nice deep breath in. And exhale. And if you're willing and able, you can give your body a good shake out. Loosen yourselves up.
Okay.
When you're ready, so I'm going to introduce Michael, and Michael is the founder and director of Heartland, and a self-healing centre. Michael's lectures and teacher of health and healing and true meaning of true forgiveness. Michael is married also to Jeannie Rice. So welcome, Michael.
And I just realized the lid was on over my camera, so it was turned on, but I wasn't there. So now I'm back.
Yes.
So delighted to be here. Delighted to be looking at this topic, and I thought your introduction to it was kind of cool, as you called it, ancestor wisdom, and the chapter title's ancient, but it's right on. That's what it's about.
Yeah, here we go.
There was some knowledge available in our history that has been buried, covered up by those who would rather own people than liberate people. So this work is about being liberated from every form of hostility or fear that your mind could possibly generate. And the understanding, I have spent better than 5 decades in this arena, and I have searched and studied everything from every corner of the earth that I could find. I have traveled to Tibet, I've traveled to China, I've traveled to India, I've been a lot of those places, and there's nothing that matches what came about in the first century Aramaic language. And it's a language that, interestingly enough, you could have traveled from the Middle East to the Great Wall of China, and virtually everybody that you ran into spoke Aramaic, understood Aramaic. It was kind of like English today is the lingua franca of the world. Well, back then, it was the language of the world. And the wisdom that's bound there is absolutely amazing. Vladimir Lenin, probably responsible for more deaths than anybody in history, any human being in history, said one of the ways you destroy a culture is by changing the meaning of its words. So I came across the Aramaic language about 42 or 43 years ago, and it became the focal point of my work and my life. I'm the director of a foundation that's translating a copy of the oldest known New Testament in Aramaic into English. And what I'll offer, where most people think of the New Testament, think of religion, actually, the man they talk about in that text was a physicist, he was a physiologist, he was a geneticist, he was a psychologist. He wasn't a theologian. And when you get to the Aramaic understanding of the words, you don't find the churchianity that's been put on top of him. What you find is good, solid, here's how the mind works, here's how the body works, here's how your genes work, here's how your family system works, here's how the energy system of your land works. They understood. And that's been eroded. So what we're looking to do is to reestablish that. And in particular, the core tool is that of forgiveness. And just to put that thought forward, we're going to talk more about this chapter as we unfold, but the word forgive has to do with collapsing the constructs of your mind that are based in internalized hidden pain, directly accessing that pain and removing it. If you want a pain-free life, you can't change everybody else out there, and by doing that, get rid of the pain that's inside of you. You've got to go inside of you. And we've got a test in this work for determining, most people by the age of 4 in this culture are literally card-carrying members of the one world universal religion of blame. Everything going on in their lives is everybody else's fault. They're in pain or trauma, and they're talking about the guy down the block or their parents or their kid or their spouse or somebody else, rarely talking about themselves, except in terms of blame of self. We're looking to eradicate that. And if you're in pain, recognize that you're in pain. And the only way you can be in pain is if there's content in you that doesn't belong there. And you can dump it, you can get rid of it. And that's what the technology of forgiveness is about. So we've determined, we've developed a test. This is a really difficult test to incorporate, but a little bit of practice, you can do it. A way to tell whether or not what you're feeling is yours or not. Are you feeling it? That's all you need to know. If you're feeling it, guess who it belongs to? Now, your mind can make up a whole world about how it's all everybody else's fault, and that will prohibit you from healing yourself. So we're looking to move that insanity, that, to get everybody to quit the one world religion of blame and step into functioning as human beings again. So in a nutshell, that's where we're heading. And I'm excited that we're here to do it.
Thank you. I've been doing a lot of ancestor stuff, so I've got it in my head. So hopefully,
I understand. I hear you.
I'll say ancient instead of ancestor.
That's where it's at. That's what it's all about.
So remember to just breathe. Whatever triggers that may come up throughout this session, to breathe, because holding your breath is exactly how you acquire a past about something and carry it with you. Holding your breath attaches the pain of an experience to a reality in your mind. So remember to just breathe. Notice the breath. So the previous chapters, Richard, a successful man in his late 30s, following the breakup of another marriage, had contacted Michael. Richard felt his life was a mess and was desperate and wanted Michael's help. In chapter 9, we looked at a blockage of truth, how brain cells must be built to see the ideas presented to you through this work. Michael went into explaining the difference between pardoning and forgiveness. Until we learn the true meaning of forgiveness, we substitute pardoning and think that forgiveness has occurred. When people forgive each other using the misunderstood form of forgiveness, they let each other off the hook.
And if I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, have I done anything to change what's happening inside of me? Absolutely nothing. So there are times where people do some pretty crazy things, and yeah, it can be a good thing to let them off the hook. But if you call that forgiveness, then you'll never do the forgiveness work. Call it what it is. It's pardoning. It can be a good thing. Not required, but it can be a good thing. The part that's required for healing is the forgiveness, which is a totally internal process. Most people, when they're in a trauma situation, there's trauma moving in them, their whole conversation is about what somebody else did. Rarely do you see somebody who's in a great deal of pain whose conversation is about themselves and what's going on inside themselves, and inquiring of themselves what's going on within that's creating this pain. We want to assist you and shift you toward that conversation and see how it works for you. What you'll find is you'll start getting rid of your pain. Just like kind of day follows night. It's just what happens.
So have you had any repeated situations occur that you have wondered, why is this happening to me again? Why are they doing this to me again? Why am I doing this to myself again? Why can't life just cooperate? Choose one repeated pattern you have been experienced that you would like to work on in yourself as we go through this session. And remember to breathe. You might want to jot it down, maybe just a few words of what that is. And who knows, that it may be triggered throughout the session. So most people, once they have clarity about the cause of the pain in their lives, are excited and eager to go to work on taking care of issues which need to be resolved. Richard was the exception. When Michael spoke to him of true forgiveness being the solution, he went ballistic. Richard's voice deepened. Forgiveness? Come on. I've been listening to your explanation, but I've tried forgiveness. It changes nothing, Richard bellowed. Take another deep breath, Michael suggested. Remember, I spoke of letting go of the dialogue in your head. I invite you to listen to my words, not your past realities about forgiveness and the negative associations you have made.
Graphic.
The way forgiveness is commonly taught is only a shadow of its true meaning and function. In this culture, we've generally accepted and substituted for true forgiveness. We've brought into the common belief that forgiveness means letting them off the hook for the terrible things they have done to us. This is a Greek concept. It comes from a mindset that externalizes everything and attributes cause to the outside world. This is not how true forgiveness was originally presented, and not even close to the original Aramaic concept. Engaging in true forgiveness is required to heal.
And my offering is that, at least, after 42, 43 years in this specific arena, is that the reason why there is still war in the world, why there are divorces, why there is conflict, why there is suffering, starvation, and pain, is because people don't have forgiveness. When you realize that we are creators, you and I are creative beings. We create the results that happen in our lives. Now, that's an idea that, when first hearing, most people are quite excited and really like that idea, that that we're creators. When the creation's going well, But when the creation's not going so well, you'll notice that virtually everybody reverts to their deep, deep religious practice of blaming somebody else. Look, it's all their fault. And that's the commitment most people have. We're inviting you to reverse that if that's been your pattern. And we're inviting you to start to look at responsibility. And so applying forgiveness, let's say we're in a situation where somebody does something that's grossly illegal. Applying forgiveness in that situation doesn't mean you don't pick up the phone and call the police and have them put in jail, charged for their crime. That's perfectly appropriate. But if you do that out of internalized, unresolved pain and trauma, you just exacerbate your pain, and you're going to get more of it the next time. So as creators, we create the situations in our lives. Now, some people call that victim blaming or victim shaming. It's not what we're suggesting. What we're offering is you are not independent of what happens in your life. It's a part of you, your creation. And when you recognize that, if you're creating something unconsciously, there's actually a whole workshop we do called On Creating Consciously. If you're creating a result in your life unconsciously, then that result is going to come back and bite you again and again and again until you touch into that unconscious part of yourself and clean it up. Doesn't mean you need to reconcile with that person. Doesn't mean you ever need to talk to them again or look at them again or think about them again. In fact, not forgiving will guarantee that you'll get to think about them a whole lot. So as I engage in forgiveness, I remove the pained context that I put this situation in. And now I'm freed from my pain. Having deleted the energy or the information with which I created this traumatic experience again, I don't have to create it again. And so it's stepping into conscious creatorship. That's what we're here to promote, is conscious creatorship. Hope that makes sense for everybody. And if a question comes up, put your hand up and let's talk about it. If something I say doesn't make sense, let's see if we can get some clarity on it.
So you've mentioned Aramaic several times. Does it have something to do with religion? That's what says Richard. If so, I'm really not interested hearing about it. The Aramaic language is an ancient tongue spoken by originators, like I want to say, of at least 5 of the world's major religions. Religions address the topic of forgiveness, of course, but the topic itself is not the exclusive property of the religious. We need not speak of forgiveness in a religious context in order to experience its enormous practical value.
So forgiveness is a psychological tool with which you heal your mind. And yes, do religions sometimes talk about that? Yes. But it has no intrinsic connection to forgiveness. In the totally secular world, if my mind is producing pain, I better get to work and clean up my pain. And so that's what we're looking to do, is to understand how that tool works and recognize that there is a technology for doing it. There's a step-by-step. Here's how you can consistently, persistently change the content of your mind. There are situations where people accidentally stumble across forgiveness and get wonderful changes in their lives. And they'll explain to someone else, oh, I got this wonderful change. Well, what did you do? Well, I'm not quite sure, but, things changed. Let me see if I can help you figure it out. Actually, the first hour of our radio show is done by Dr. Tim Hayes, who's a clinical psychologist. And he's been doing my work now for about the last 20 years. And when he first started listening to my radio show, he started to use the forgiveness process and then used it in his practice and found he was able to pass it on to people. And he shared with us how he would, oftentimes he and other psychologists would follow, some great famous psychologist who was getting wonderful results and, go do their work. And he said, never could any of us ever reproduce what that famous psychologist was doing. They couldn't give us here's how you do it. And so it was not reproducible. the thing that excited him about the forgiveness worksheet process, the reality management process we're sharing with you, is that he says, I can hand that to anybody. They don't have to be a professional. I can hand that to anybody and they can produce the result. That's the beauty of the tool. It works consistently, persistently. And it's the only thing I know of that, if it's applied consistently and persistently, will totally dissolve the traumatic events that have gone on in your culture, your family system, in your own life for perhaps generations. So it's about cleaning up the past.
For me, Richard began, forgiveness has been linked to religion, something which doesn't interest me. It never occurred to me that it could be useful in a practical sense outside of religious content. Can you relate to Richard? Was forgiveness linked to religion for you? What were you taught about forgiveness? So you can put it in the chat if you want as well. Or jot it down, just awaken what that is for you. What were you taught?
And so while you're thinking about and jotting it down, did anybody ever tell you that every thought, every feeling, every unresolved reality from at least the previous 4 generations of your bloodline were stored within your genes and within your structure? Did anybody ever tell you that? I doubt it. Well, I'm telling you that now. And because you're a creator, if you filter your life through those dynamics which your previous generations never resolved, the issues that they didn't resolve are going to show up in your life. That's what creatorship is about. So what we're looking to do is to clean that part of the mind up. So forgiveness is a way to clean your mind of past traumas, circumstances, situations, and patterns, and arrive at a space where your so-called body-mind unit, your energy field, is a receptive place for you as love to show up and create from that space of conscious, active, present love. So that's what we're looking to do. That's what it's all about, Alfie.
Somebody's put, I've learned that forgiveness is not about the other person, but freeing yourself from the situation.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And there's a technology for doing it. It's not something you just go, oh, well, I think I'll free myself from a situation. There is a methodology for doing that, and that's what we've decoded from the Aramaic, and that's what the reality management worksheet is about. It's the how-to. And when you look at the most current worksheet, you're looking at probably version, I don't know, 4,382. I don't know. There have been so many versions of it. There are times as I was developing the brain cells and understanding, shifting out of the understanding or the belief that forgiveness was about letting somebody out there off the hook to how to interact with your own internal dynamics. There was so much learning to be done, so much understanding. And so there were times when I might be working on that worksheet and I might do 2 or 3 or 4 totally different versions in the same day. So that's been through thousands. Yes, and so someone just put in the post, Christy, thank you, Christine. Forgive them for they know not what they do. Actually, that's a mistranslation from the Aramaic. It doesn't say that at all. Everywhere that we hear the Greeks tell us that Yeshua or someone else in the scriptures said, forgive them, actually, they're missing 2 words. And this can be a little tricky to get a hold of at first. But in each of those phrases, rather than forgive them for they know not what they do, the words in Aramaic would be forgive as to them, for they know not what they do. And the as to runs like this. If you and I interact and I'm in some sort of denial and you resonate what I've denied, that which I have denied, I will use literally to build my brain's perception of you. You will show up in my mind with my problem attached, and I will really truly believe that it's your problem. That was understood in the Aramaic. So they understood that it was internal. So they weren't saying forgive them, for they know not what to do. They were saying, if you interact with a brother and that brother brings up pain in you, you forgive as to what that person brought up in you. So with that as to, you've got ownership for everything that moves inside of you. When they dropped that, it became, oh, well, it's all their fault, just forgive them. But again, if you create out of a particular unresolved generational pattern a painful situation over and over and over again, and of course, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines, if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, you'll notice that you're the one that was there every time. And so if you're in pain because Bill said something that brought up rage and fear in you, I would never say to you, forgive Bill. And if I were Aramaic, my words would be forgive as to Bill. So what Bill brought up in you is a fit subject for forgiveness. It's not Bill you're forgiving. Hope that clarifies. It makes sense.
We've got a few in the chat. Forgive them. Oh no, that's not. I've learned that blaming someone for how I'm feeling is like drinking poison and expecting them to suffer.
Yes, that's it.
I can't forgive myself for stupid mistakes, etc. So I'm constantly looking backwards.
Yeah. And I'll offer, never forgive yourself or anybody else for anything. If you do something that's, you say this is not good and you choose to pardon yourself, great idea, pardon yourself. And then, having pardoned yourself, go about doing the work of forgiveness, changing the content of your mind. But if you think that you can let yourself off the hook for that and that your forgiveness work is done, you're mistaken. Someone's posting, Agape is posting. I think the Arabic, oh, it just disappeared. Let me get that back.
Read it out.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my, here we are. I think the Arabic meaning of forgiveness is the end result. Not sure what that means. To me, forgiveness is no longer reliving the offense. And of course, if the content's still in your mind to be resonated, you are going to relive the offense. That's why forgiveness is about removing the energy that created the offense in the first place. So. And when I read the end of that, on those people who I trust and end up leaving me for dead, that sounds like some deep forgiveness work to be done. Sounds like some deep hurt there that ultimately is going to need to be resolved. Holding the space for that.
Somebody's put interesting. We'll re-listen to this explanation as to. Cool. So I put this question for you, Michael, to explain what is Aramaic and why is it so important?
Okay. Well, again, Aramaic was the lingua franca of the day for several thousand years in the Middle East to the Great Wall of China. The Persian Empire lived in pretty much total peace with its neighbors for about 3,000 years. I mean, 3,000 years without war under the Aramaic understanding of life. Anybody who understands the true Aramaic understands that their internal experience is their internal experience and it's changeable. So it was the language of at least 5 of the world's major religions. You have the man named Yeshua, you have Moses, you have Baha'u'llah, who's a more modern 18th century, the Baha'i faith. He taught in Aramaic. And there's just such a totally different mindset when you get to that. Sadly, most of the teachers that we see, Muhammad was also, and Zoroaster spoke Aramaic, an ancient Eastern religion. And each of these thought systems were based in a space of being responsible and knowing what was going on inside of you rather than, starting you out your first, your early days in life in that religion of blame, that it's all somebody else's fault. It was about coming back inside yourself, taking responsibility. When they said, you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother, that wasn't a bleeding heart statement. They were saying if there was pain, what you considered wrong energetically inside of you, and your brother came along and did a behavior that resonated that in you, and you used that to build your brain's image of your brother, then you forgave from your unconscious. That word heart there isn't, a bleeding heart statement, forgive from your heart. They're saying you must go into your own unconscious, and whatever you're feeling is yours. If you've put it into your brain's image of your brother, oh, you caused me all this rage. Well, you'll notice you've been through that rage 87 different times with 42 different people. And you're the only one that's there every time. That's something you've structured. And what they were saying with that statement is if you put that into your brain's image of your brother, then you must forgive. You must remove from your unconscious that which you put into your brain's image of someone else. Then you're free of it.
Still sounds like a religious spiel to me, Richard says.
Hooked into it. It's amazing the kind of pain and trauma that a lot of people carry from the religious upbringing. It's really quite tragic that hostility and fear has come into religion via minds that refuse to do their own work. And again, they always have someone else to blame. And, when did the one world religion of blame start? If you look into the Western scriptures, you can go back all the way into the Old Testament, right at the beginning. What does Adam say about the trouble he's having? He says to the Creator, God, that woman you gave me. So right from the beginning, this religion's been around a long time. You got God and the woman to blame. I think it's time to give that one up and get back to being adults and being responsible for what we're doing to ourselves. And that's not a religious idea. It's just, it works where you live. And clearly Richard's got some pain to resolve.
So can you let go of the conversation in your head long enough to hear that there might be something more in scriptures than religion? If you investigate genuine spiritual teachings, you will find they are about life. They deserve serious consideration. In truth, they are simply an owner manual for your life, relationship, and body. Once you go beneath the misinterpretation and grasp the original Aramaic thought structure in the scriptures, you will discover the original intention of religion was to create a community where it was safe and nurturing to live differently than the insanity we humans have created in the world. A community that taught people how life worked and instructed people how to achieve the best life had to offer. Many religions still hold fast to this as their goal. Do you recall hearing quotes from the scripture like, "Do not judge by appearance, do not defile the temple, and the wages of sin is death"? Michael asked Richard. Yes, and it never made one lick of sense to me either. When I was a kid, I heard hypocrites spouting that stuff all the time when they would do exact opposite when they thought no one was looking. It sure turned me off, Richard said with disgust. I hear it was confusing for you to see people not walking their talk. With the amount of energy and resistance you have around this conversation, I suspect you were abused to the hypocrites. Were you?
So let's go back for a second to that last slide. Let's look at those three statements and look at the practical application. Do not judge by appearances. Well, you'll notice that if let's say right now we opened up the microphones for everybody, and everybody shared what you've heard so far here in the how long we've been together now? 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes. I guarantee you that no two of us would say the same thing. If we each had 3 minutes to express what's been said, no three of us would say, or no two of us would say the same thing. Why? Because each of us has a reality. My mind, based on what's going on in the world, and what that which is going on in the world resonates in me, produces a reality. Your mind, based on what's contained in your mind and what's going on in your world, your mind will produce a reality. In the ancient Aramaic, that was called an appearance. And appearances in the mind are crazy. If you want to see a really good video, I suggest make a note and look this up on YouTube. It's by a man named Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. He's a neurobiologist, and he does it's a TED Talk. So just put in Anil Seth TED Talk. It's awesome. I think I don't remember now exactly, 18, 20 minutes, something like that. And he lays out exactly how the mind generates perception, and that none of us through our eyes see what's going on out there. That's what they meant in the ancient Aramaic by appearances. If you judge by that, then you're going to be flowing down the river of life, guided by generational wisdom and or generational errors. If you feel like, your family system did a great job, and well, just keep rolling down that river. But maybe there's another level of it if you move out of appearances and start to touch into actuality. Do not defile the temple. The temple was not this building with a purple curtain in it. And they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain. They weren't talking about a purple curtain in the church. This is the temple. And when they're talking about defiling the temple from a point of view of physics, if we listen to Einstein says this: on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Einstein tells us matter does not exist. What exists then? What exists is an energy system, and relative to your energy system, there are basically two qualities of energy. There's that which builds it up and that which tears it down. Don't defile the temple just says don't put any tear down energy into your structure. What is tear down energy? What's the word that was used to represent putting an energy into your structure that would tear you apart? The word was sin. It's an archery term, as Inca said earlier. If you were on the archery range and you fired at the bullseye and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper would yell sin. Or if you miss the target altogether, the scorekeeper would yell evil, like you're totally off target. You're off the mark, sin, and totally off, evil. That's all it means. It's talking about what supports your life and physiology and what doesn't. So don't defile the temples. Pretty big piece of wisdom. And then, of course, the wages of sin is death. I can remember as a kid being told that and being in fear. Oh, God's going to get me for the sins. But that word again, it's off the mark. What's the result? If I put enough, if this device, and my thesis is, if you hold a newborn child, you tap into the essence, you find that there's just a pure essence of love there. My offering would be this body-mind unit for all of us is designed to be a place where love resides and expresses. If I put in hate, fear, anger, rage, guilt, grief, trauma, each frequency that I put in weakens the cellular structure of my body. And the result of that is you die. All death is self-inflicted. I like to use the acronym here, SIN, self-inflicted nonsense. Stop doing that to yourself. Hate, fear, rage, guilt, grief, condemnation, gossip, slander, vengeance, grief, hate, fear. None of that stuff belongs in you, and it will destroy you. That's all. So systematically, now it will seem like there are situations where there's no other choice. And the only reason it seems there's no other choice is because the resonance of that energy is so strong in you and perhaps in your genes that it seems like nothing else is possible. If you start applying forgiveness, actual first century Aramaic forgiveness, what you'll do is you'll weaken the presence of those toxic energies. And all of a sudden the game changes. It changes dramatically. So that's the practical aspect of virtually every idea that's expressed in those ancient teachings.
So my folks talked a lot about love and honesty at church, but beat me up verbally and physically at home. If I spoke up or asked why they acted so differently in public, the beating doubled. I had to lie to keep the family secrets. I had to be dishonest in order to make it look like everything was okay, or I'd be punished. Keeping up appearance was demanded of me. It was pretty crazy. While I was being lectured on the value of telling the truth, I was required to live a lie. Richard bit his nails like an angry, scared little boy ready to flee as he replayed his story. I saw hypocritism in the ministers and deacons, lots of people. They were always telling me I was a sinner. That was painful, Richard explained as he held his breath.
And the people who give those kinds of meanings, project those appearances on the ancient teachings, do that because that's what's in their minds, because they haven't done their own work. I remember getting a call, this goes back, probably 20 years ago, and there was a man who had been a fundamentalist minister for 50 years. And, he did the old hellfire and brimstone stuff. And he contacted me and he said, I understand you're the director of this foundation. Yes. He said, well, I'd like to use a page of your manuscript, a copy of it, as a cover for a book that I'm writing. So, well, what's happening? What's that about? So, well, I was a minister for 50 years and I had a mental breakdown. And for a year, I was incapacitated. He said, one of my favorite things for 50 years was reading my Bible. And he said, for a year, I couldn't even pick the Bible up. He said, and then at the end of that year, I picked the Bible up and all I could see was that it was a book about love. For 50 years, I didn't see that. And so he was actually writing a book for ministers, and the Aramaic understanding portrayed what he was talking about. And so he ended up using a page from the manuscript itself as the cover of his book, which he then went and really worked with ministers to say, hey guys, that stuff isn't what it's about. So we're here to kind of reinforce that journey into recognizing the truth about it and realizing that the breath is a big key in staying connected to our true human lives.
That's a big thing that I've taken from your teachings about the breath, and noticing throughout my day what I'm doing with the breath.
It's a major key for sure.
So what family secrets were you asked to keep? What faulty religious teachings may be impacting your life today?
Is there any of that you need to look at and deal with? Make some notes, and that might be a topic for some worksheets for you.
My family life was very much like Richard, where there was an image outside of the home that was very different to inside of the home.
Unfortunately, that's pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
Bizarre, but unfortunately true.
It's being able to recognize the impact it has as an adult, because you just go through the habit and think that's normal, automatic.
Yeah, the whole reality structure is based on the content of the mind. So those things show up as true simply because that's what's going on in the mind, not because it's true. Again, those appearances, until they're forgiven, until they're removed, they're just going to keep playing out and playing out and playing out.
Hopefully that's enough time to jot a few down if you've noticed or recognized any in yourself. But no emotional honesty in the family, feelings of isolation.
And notice what's happening with your breath as you think about those things.
Somebody's asked a question, and what if the secret has no link with religion?
Which secret is that you're talking about? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I'm not sure if you want to write it in. Incest.
Oh, you mean the family?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Yes, it doesn't matter what the trauma was. The idea is that you pick up the forgiveness process. I mean, we're focusing this part of the conversation because our character and a lot of people in the world have a challenge with religion as such and seeing through to the truth of what it was meant for, not the abuses it is. But whatever arena the trauma fits, whether it's personal relationship, we do a whole workshop called codependence to interdependence, and we look at what we call a power person dynamic, and that's a totally different arena. It really doesn't matter what the trauma energy is, it can be addressed with forgiveness.
Somebody else has put, to me, forcefully having to go to church or get mentally abused.
Yeah. Pretty bizarre, isn't it? The mind's ability to deceive itself is absolutely amazing. And so oftentimes those deceptions go on generation after generation after generation. Yeah, that's a pretty common. I mean, the drug addiction in our culture, in America, if you go to the to government statistics, the AMA statistics, 1 out of 3 deaths is caused by properly prescribed drugs. That's definitely, and if you look at the word pharmaceutical, when you look at that whole idea of drugs healing disease, you realize how preposterous it is when every drug is a disease disguised as a cure. That's why if you open any drug package, you'll see a whole list of diseases that are caused by that. They call them side effects. They're not side effects, they're diseases are caused by that drug. Now, yes, you could put that drug in to suppress a certain set of symptoms, and that could save somebody's life, but that's not healing. You got to recognize the difference between treatment and healing. When you and treatment, again, it can save somebody's life. Wonderful stuff. But if you only do treatment and you never do healing work, you're in trouble, because the long-term effect is, I remember back, this is 20 or so years ago, we had a gentleman who was former military, retired military, in an intensive we were doing, and we were talking about this topic of drugs. And he came in, he got up, it was a residential facility. He got up and went back to his room and brought back a Walmart style, like a Walmart plastic shopping bag full with drugs. And that's what he was taking every day. Within about 2 months, he was down to 1 drug that was considered necessary. But no, healing and drugs are, in the right hands, can be compatible. Unfortunately, they're not usually compatible.
So I've noticed it's not just like pharmacy drugs, it's like the spiritual world of people taking a lot of what they say is natural drugs to hit a high level of consciousness. But I've noticed it's very regular. It's they're taking it a lot.
Yeah, well, if it becomes the source of one's ability to connect, then it's a false path. Again, in the ancient teachings, it wasn't much different thousands of years ago. They said, You can't storm the gates of the kingdom. You can't force your way in to the state of recovering your true self. And when they talk about the kingdom of heaven, those words in Aramaic translate properly in our English language today. The closest you could get would be the community of love. You can't force your way in there. You can't take your generational bag of hostility, rage, guilt, grief, pain, drama, trauma, whatever it is, and walk into the community of love. Can't do it. I mean, you can physically walk in, but you're not going to be there until you start cleaning up what you're carrying in your bag of garbage. And relationships are the opportunity to clean up our garbage. You definitely need to be careful what kind of substances you use to try to achieve false states. And when, there are several ways to open a space of understanding. For instance, you read the literature on what people call near-death experiences. I don't call them near-death experiences. I call them near-life experiences. Most people are dead carry so much trauma within them, generational patterns of trauma, that they are literally dead to themselves as love. If that person experiences clinical death, and then the body is resuscitated, they usually come back talking about this awesome experience of light and love that they had. That wasn't a near-death experience. That was a near-life experience. That's where they touched into the truth of who they were. And many of those people come back and step in and start to do their work and clean up their past.
I can
And
vouch for that.
in the right hands, properly facilitated, there are pharmaceuticals that can help one on one's journey.
We've got, because someone could not live up to a teaching does not mean it was no value or that the problem lies within the teachings. One issue that occurs in our parents' inability to live up to their ideals, that does not make them good or bad. It simply means that, like all humans, they were not perfect. Often, we have attached the imperfections or abuse of our parents to their religion. Projecting our pain into religion makes it difficult for us to see any benefit in it. I guess my parents deserve the right to be human too. Perhaps I expected too much of them, Richard pondered. I can see that they were trying and doing the best they could. I feel relieved just knowing that, Richard said softly. That insight is a result of forgiveness. It's a small but significant example of how forgiveness works, explained Michael. What do you mean? Asked Richard. We have a reality, a file, so to speak, called my parents or parents should have been perfect. According to your perception, they weren't, and you attach the pain, abuse, and resentment you experienced with them to your mind file on parents. Whenever the reality parent was triggered, your perception of them or yourself as a parent was clouded by the complex of thoughts and feelings in that file.
Important piece to understand, especially if you've got unresolved issues with a parent and you are about to become a parent. Because one of the things that kids do, I think one of the main functioning purposes of children is to act as our unconscious mind, hang out in true living color and Dolby sound. Everything we've never dealt with, our children are going to play out because they're from the same genetic structure, and they don't have a stop button. And my offering is that every form of abuse or punishment is attempting to wire a stop button into the child so they won't resonate what we haven't dealt with. Our upset toward a child isn't toward a child, it's what the child has resonated in us. So again, when we start to clean up that file on parents, parenting skills change dramatically and totally. You get to start to make new choices.
Aramaic forgiveness means to cancel. The minute you loosen your grip on your need for them to be perfect, in effect, you cancelled your need for that perfection. The result of that action is your parent file opened and the abuse, pain, and resentment it contained began to release. This is true forgiveness in the Aramaic, certainly a radically different action than letting them off the hook. As the cloud over your perception of them lifted, a painful reality was in process of being forgiven, and you can now see them more realistically.
You can bring forward compassion rather than pain in situations where you acquired pain. And that is a powerful dynamic. Jeannie, my wife, does work with private work with people on the phone on Zoom. And she has been doing several sessions with a fairly high-powered businessman. And he was touching into some dynamics with his mother, who he, like she was the problem in his life through childhood and still carried things from that. And when they got down to it, what he realized was that he perceived that his mother rejected, didn't like him, just somehow there was some energy that was in his mind that was from his mother. And so Jeannie had him do a worksheet, forgiveness process, as though he were his mother. So he's doing it in her stead. And there was a moment that, I mean, it's you do your work and there are crescendo moments. There are places where that big shift occurs. And so he's doing this worksheet on his mother, and Jeannie's guiding him through it. They're having a conversation about it. And right in the middle of it, as she's, he is functioning as his mom, imagining he's his mom. And Jeannie invited him as mother to look at her son. And this man stopped. And Jeannie actually said she thought that the computer screen had frozen because there was no motion. He just totally, completely froze in place for a minute or so. And she said, "What happened?" And his take was, "Oh my God, she sees me as perfect." Yesterday, she did another session with him. This was last week. Yesterday, she did another session with him. He said, "People in my office, I went into the office and people are saying, 'What happened? What's changed?'" Those are the kind of moments that open the space for massive amounts of processing to occur. And that's how it happens. And it happens a piece at a time, step by step. As you let go of those internally generated energies, literally your whole frequency pattern changes. Behaviors, perceptions, emotions, everything changes. Diseases change. Mental, physical, emotional, financial, relationship diseases change as you do that process.
So I'm not sure I heard everything you just said, but I sure feel relieved, Richard sighed. This release will impact not only your mother and father, but due to the new clarity in your parent file, your capacity to parent will also be enhanced. Notice, Richard, parents were not involved in this process of healing, and neither they nor the actuality of the past have changed, yet he feels better. You are always in charge of your feelings, and no change required of anyone, but in order for you to heal. Our natural state is happiness, the human being designed to feel good. Just observe the ease and happiness of a child before it is impacted by our culture's insanities.
And I would change one word here from, that was what was originally in the book. And I've had a new level of understanding come in around this word happiness. Actually, happiness is the result of achieving a goal. And when you achieve the goal, you get a hit of dopamine, which has been called happy powder. People who do things like cocaine, after they've done cocaine, they have a fall. Why? Because the cocaine has accelerated the use of dopamine. So they're high, but the dopamine's all used up and they crash. So rather than this, our natural state is happiness, our natural state is joy. And joy doesn't have anything to do with achieving goals. Joy comes from living as a human being, living out of your true state of being. Different than happiness, just a slight refinement, but an important one that I've made since I originally wrote the book.
You said the release process began, Michael. Does that mean it's not complete? Will I have to go through more of that pain? Richard winced as he wrapped his arms around his knees. Healing is not an event, explained Michael. It is a process. It takes time and happens in stages. You will tend to experience your process as painful as long as you resist it and want to hold on. Healing can be pleasant, exciting, and easy experience, though. Unfortunately, many, because of their resistance, don't go through it easily. The best way I know to accelerate healing is to apply what I like to call cosmic grease. It is the willingness to embrace with love whatever you find inside yourself. It speeds up the process immeasurably.
So willingness just greases the rails and things move at a much faster pace. If one lives in, no, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to do it. No, obviously you just need to look at, if you think of yourself as energy and conducting energy, what do you suppose this does compared to this? The energy stopped. And so people can, they can expand their healing process out years by living in resistance, and can shorten the process by years by being in willingness.
Changing realities. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it changed the reality in your mind about the past. There is no reason why the pain of the old reality should be carried inside of us. Your relief and release is a good example of a successful use of true forgiveness.
That's how it works.
Richard's relief in the situation with his parents came from a spontaneous forgiveness, the kind that happens in an accidental and haphazard fashion. One of the primary tools we offer, which you can learn to use and take home with you, is called the Reality Management Worksheet. The purpose for this tool is to teach, on an experimental level, how both joy and pain are created. It is a reliable scientific method you can use at any time to let pain go and really embrace the joy.
Yes.
And a key thought, willingness is the key to empowerment. If you want to be empowered, use the key. And the best exercise I know is to practice and strengthen your ability to hold a space of love is to close your eyes and allow yourself to become quiet. With your awareness focused inside, think of that which inspires in you the clearest, strongest, most powerful love you are capable of feeling. Just hold a space to just breathe.
And so while we're breathing, does anyone have any questions?
Anybody like to ask any questions or share any comments?
So everything's just that simple, straightforward. Everybody's got it. Awesome.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, I just wanted to know, on the worksheet, it says, my denial causes my CBM. What does CBM mean?
Yeah, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see their definition. CBM is short for carbon-based memory. If you took your body into a lab and said, break this down and tell me what it's made of, they tell you the base element of your structure is carbon. So carbon stores information. So carbon-based memory, we're looking at the fact that this structure is made of carbon. And when you tie it back into the ancient teachings, you know, the atomic structure of carbon is 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. 666, you might remember that number. What is it? It's the mind that goes against love in us. And so if we have pain stored in our structures from the past, then the tendency will be to keep playing that pain out again and again and again. And when you clean out what's in carbon-based memory, the game changes. Everything's different.
Right.
That makes sense?
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Michael. Can I ask a question?
Please go for it. That's why we'd be here.
I have my video on, but I'm in a dark space. I mean, literally.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, if we understand when we get to the purpose of birthing through this experience, the purpose of our existence, and if we bring that down to one word, which might be love, then perhaps everything else that we are to experience needs to move us to love. In other words, the experience will be through the experience of hate, fear, something to forgive that would move us to love, because love is the purpose. If that is the intention of this experience. So what I'm saying is, if we define our mere existence by a word or an ethos or a value system or a vibration, what is our purpose here? Then it would make sense that, for example, we will have to go through experiences all the time that will keep challenging us, keep pushing us, keep tripping us, so that we can keep moving ourselves towards the love game. Would you agree with that, or how do you resonate with that?
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate way to say it. In essence, the fact is we are love. We have a device, carbon-based memory, that's filled with all kinds of other stuff that gets in the way. And we get to identify with that stuff as who we are. You know, at one point you hear Yeshua saying, in order for you to live, you've got to die. If we've got a self based in carbon-based memory systems of I'm inadequate, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, life will never work, I always lose, you know, whatever the power person messages are that we get, then we identify with that as self. And here Yeshua says that self has got to go. So there's room for the true being to come into your physiology, for the active presence of your human life to show up physiologically. So yeah, I'd be in full agreement with you on that.
Perfect, because I was just thinking about, like, from and of course it's embedded in most philosophies, as you have said, most isms, most doctrines of belief, that we are light, as you say, we are love. So therefore the opposite of the shadow challenges has to come forward so that the light can shine.
Yes. Yeah. Cleaning up the vessel so that the true being can reflect through physiology. And experience life as it's designed to be lived.
Thank you.
Delighted.
I don't come often, as Yinka knows, but when I do, I'm delighted. So thank you.
Oh, great. And you know, the each session is in the archive, so you can always pick it up if you happen to miss a session. It's there. And the session we did 2 weeks ago, where we did a worksheet, was very powerful. So if you have the space to listen to that, go back and catch that. It was a very courageous worksheet that was done.
It's on Father's Shams as well. So you might want to listen to that one.
Father issues, yeah.
Yeah.
Family. It's a big one.
So listening to you like asking the question, it makes me kind of question, because so what's the point? What's the point of going through all this process and coming to this world and experiencing this?
Give me that question in a different way.
Like, do you know, like when you ask about what's the purpose? It's kind of like, what is the point? Is there an end goal? Is it to be just love? And then what is the point?
Well, it's interesting. If you go to the Aramaic, you hear after the creation of man, the words are said, at least the Greeks translate it as, go forth and multiply and replenish the face of the earth. Most everybody listened to the multiply command, but replenish the face of the earth hasn't been understood. And in Aramaic, what that phrase means is, in essence, you're the cutting edge of creation. Go finish the creation. What are you going to bring in next? What are you as an individual going to bring into the world? What's your contribution? We actually do a workshop called Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. And there's a worksheet, step-by-step worksheet process for bypassing the brainwash of the culture. You know, most of the culture has a use for you. They send you to school, not so that you'll learn how to think and how to function in the world. They send you to school because they have a commercial purpose for you, and you'll be brainwashed with a commercial purpose, so you'll make a good employee for somebody someday. That's basically what education does. And the word, which in essence, that is a process of indoctrination. The word educate actually is educare, means to draw out. It doesn't mean fill in a mind that's empty so it does what you want it to do. The word educare is, there's an essential being in there. Draw that being out into the world for its full expression. So that would be my take, is that we're here to recognize what our part is in the creative process.
Did you say that there's a worksheet to go with that? Purpose?
Yes. Yeah, if you go to the website, just do search Purpose, Personal Power, Commitment, or Purpose Worksheet on the website. It's
Okay.
there.
I shall do that. I've been questioning this quite often.
Cool.
Michael, you use the word clearing when you discuss the process. Clearing. It's interesting because it reminds me, how would you translate heart in Aramaic language?
Okay. First of all, Yinka, I just sent you in the Facebook page a set of links. It's a new set of links. You maybe got them already, but maybe put them in the chat. It's a kind of a pathway for people to follow to get acquainted with work. In Aramaic, that word heart, you know, when they say take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. That word is a code word for the unconscious. They're saying that the massive data, the massive energy that you hold is in your unconscious. And so clean it up, take care of it, because that's what's going to result in the dynamics that happen in your life. Another code word for the unconscious is also the desert. You hear this story about this group of people who are very well acquainted with astronomy. Their writing on astronomy has been pretty precise, but we're told, and they try to convince us, they were lost in a 35 square mile area for 40 years, this hot, sandy desert, 40 years in the desert. It's like, do you think people who know about astronomy could possibly get lost in a 35 square mile area for 40 years? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But when you realize that word desert is another code word for the unconscious, what is it? Most people spend about 40 years there before they start to kind of scratch their heads and go, maybe there's something different happening here. Maybe I'm involved in my life and it isn't all them. And so what had to happen to get out of the desert or the state of unconsciousness? What they said was the old generation has to die off. That didn't mean everybody in old physical bodies had to physically die. The root of the word generation is genari, means cause. The causes held in mind from the generations need to go. Otherwise, we're just replicating past generations. And they said that in a different way again. They said, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs. We're just playing out the programming if we're functioning out of the desert or the unconscious or the heart. So take care of the heart, clean it up. How do you get into the heart to clean it up? Forgiveness. That's what that tool's designed for. Everything you see in your perceptual mind, every construct your mind makes is a reflection of the content of your unconscious, your heart. And so when you clean it up, then all of a sudden your perceptual constructs become more and more and more in alignment with truth rather than in alignment with your unresolved family dynamics, your old generations. So it's about cleaning up the generational patterns. Does that fit for your question? Does that make sense?
Yes, it's lovely. It's lovely. The reason why I asked is because heart in Arabic is qalb, which is a noun, which is a thing. But actually, it's also translated into a verb, which means turning. So it's a constant turning, and that's why it resonates beautifully with what you just said.
Yes,
so thank you.
Yes, it keeps. And most people. I forget who it was, one of the philosophers that said, 100 million people live and die every century and never even know they've lived. They never awaken from what's turning in them, the automatic decision system that just runs their lives, and they never wake up from it. And so the idea of this work is to wake up from it, to, here I am showing up as an original creative being. What am I here to bring into the world? What contribution am I here to make, rather than what turning is going to go on in me that's just going to play out like an old grinding wheel? So, yeah, good. That's nice to know from the. Would you explain that again? From the Arabic?
The word. It's qalb, QALB, if you want, and it means heart, literally. And so it's the pumping organ, but it means qalb, to continuously turn, keep turning and turning and turning towards light, clarity, and the cleansing. So, yeah.
Perhaps tying in with the whirling dervishes.
But,
brings in another level of energy.
Yeah, and still remaining core-centered as well.
Yes. Yeah. Connected.
Aligned.
Connected to source. Allah, connected.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that piece.
Got Jane next with her hand raised.
Hey, young lady, how are you? There you go. You're unmuted.
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Today. So, yeah, what was I going to say? I really appreciated you explaining about appearances, because my brain wasn't looking at it that way at all. So, yeah, that was like really mind expanding for me. Thank you.
Cool.
And a couple of questions. You've said several times over the course of time that I've enjoyed your teachings that you've been doing this work something like 50 years, and in the last 5 years it's beginning to make more sense. And I'm paraphrasing, so could you like touch on why that might be?
Well, my take is, when you realize that we have structured in us, and I take this as literal, every thought, every feeling, every structured reality, every issue unresolved, every skill, every strength, every weakness of each person, our generational patterns, is stored in us. That's a pretty massive database. Specifically, they speak of it in the New Testament. They talk about the sins of the father will be passed into 3 and 4 generations. There's actually an interesting phrase that comes at the end of that, but just that first part. So the energetic patterns that are off the mark will be passed to 4 generations which means stored in our carbon-based memory are those generational dynamics. And the final part of that phrase is, yea, of those who hate me. Now, my offering would be, that's the Creator talking to us directly, saying, you have an advisor, and your advisor, if you don't connect with me, and hate in that particular phrase, the word hate is not as in a love-hate relationship, but those who are separated from me. So what was called the mind of Christ, nothing mystical, nothing religious about it. There is a mind based in love that's available to us, and it's in every one of us. So if I'm locked into the generational mind, then being locked into that generational mind, I'm going to play it out over and over and over again. I'm looking for a new mind to arrive in me. As that new mind arrives, I start to function out of that mind rather than the mind of the past. So if I look at just 4 generations, there's my parents, 2, add 4 for their parents, add 8, add 16, you now got 32 lives. That's what's in this database. That's a pretty massive database. But then when you think about, well, where did the 4th generation back get their thoughts, their feelings, their structures? But from the previous 4, who got them from the previous 4, who got them from the previous 4, who got them from, we literally have our whole generational pattern in there. Now, if you do the math and you just go back 30 generations, there are 1.6 billion people in each of our genes. The unresolved pattern, I mean, how massive is that? And, just go now to 31 generations, you got 3.2 billion. Go to 32 generations, you got 6.4 billion. How massive is that database? And if you remember from your high school training in physics, they defined inertia for us. And inertia says that a body that's moving in a particular direction, a particular rate of speed, is going to tend you to continue moving that direction at that rate of speed until it's acted upon by an outside force. So we have this massive database that's moving in a direction. In terms of conscious awareness, out of the Harvard research we've talked about, we get to see 9 bits of data as conscious awareness out of what potentially is millions of lives of unresolved issues, and think about what's gone before us. So if you recognize that we come into the world and this database, like, we don't have to say, oh, let's see, I want an extra set of cells in the liver, and I want some in the brain, I want some in the kidney. It unfolds. The momentum of the program that's there unfolds, and we don't have to participate in developing this body. It develops. If everything in the generational pattern in the genes is harmony, then you get a perfectly formed physical form, or so-called physical body. If something's off base, then you end up with disease processes. They call them generational or genetic diseases. And even in the arena where genetic diseases are believed in, they're like extremely, extremely, extremely rare, like tiny, tiny fragment. And so we've got this massive database, and to me, it's recognizing the depth of that database, and there's not much impetus in our culture to lift us up and carry us into healing those patterns. The impetus of the world, if you look at, I don't care, go turn on any television station, and out of the 800 that you could possibly look at, there might be 2 that would have something that might lift you into healing. The other 798 are about, well, let's do the drama and trauma. Let's be the criminal president fighting and attacking people. Let's be this, let's be, what kind of craziness is going on? So when I said that, what I'm recognizing is that for me, in my own personal process, functioning as a human being, I can see how in the last 5 years, I've just reached a new level, a new place that I never could have conceived of before. And, I could spend hours talking about the depth, the trauma, the healing crisis that I've been through in my work, personally, in terms of my own internal work. And I just recognized that, you know, even having done it for this long, I'm really just scratching the surface. And to me, that's, people could take that as a downer, but you could also take it as an inspiration, like what's really possible for us as human beings. You know, they're showing us this new telescope, the shots coming from space where, you know, they're showing that the universe is 100 quadrillion times bigger than what we thought it was. And, you know, all this stuff showing us. My personal take is that humans were designed to be able to comprehend and function within that. But you can't comprehend and function within that if you're anchored to a past based in hostility and fear. And so that expression for me was seeing that I'm personally reaching a new level. And I could say that many times in my life where it's just like, wow, this is what it's really all about. Oh my God, now I finally understand. So for me, I've reached a new level, a new comprehension of it.
Well,
That make
thanks.
sense?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate hearing about your personal process and, you know, that it's continual, it's ongoing, and that, you know, in time, it's enriching and fulfilling.
It is. It's amazing. And I'll share a piece that happened to me. It's probably about a year ago now, but this for me was a particularly poignant and powerful piece of work that came about for me to look at and do. And I was doing a still point breathing session. And when I do that, I'm usually laying down and my eyes are closed. So that's the position I'm in. And as I'm breathing away, I get the instruction to look down. Now my eyes are closed, but I'm told to look down. So I was like, okay, I'll look down. And I look down, just, you know, pointing my eyes downward inside. And I get a visual of a sea of blackness so huge, like I can hardly comprehend it. And throughout that sea of blackness, they're kind of like your background on your Zoom there. There are these specks of light, all like an uncountable number of specks of light. And so I kind of get a sense of it. And it's like, what am I looking at? What is this? And what I was told was that these are my ancestors and the darkness that they're living in. And they were asking me if I would help to process that trauma energy that they were still stuck in. To which I replied verbally. I spoke out loud. I don't know why I did, but I spoke out loud. Yes, of course I will do that. And when I do still point breathing, my phone is usually off. But for some reason, I hadn't turned my phone off. It was laying beside me and it rang. Literally at the instant that I speak the words, yes, I will take that on, my phone rings. I pick up my phone and it's my son, Michael J. Hey, Dad. I'm on Ancestor.com and I need some information about our ancestors. I mean, literally at the instant where I said to my ancestors, yes, I will help process that. My son, now he's 43. We've never had a conversation about ancestors. You know, my family was in Canada. We were down here. We didn't have a whole lot of contact. But we'd never had a conversation like that. And at the instant I said those words, my son's on the phone saying, hey, Dad, I need some information. I'm on Ancestry.com and I want to get some information about our ancestors. So to me, it was just verification. It's like, yep, that's it. And so I oftentimes will just get quiet and tap in. It's like, so what needs to be processed? Like all of those ancestors, am I willing to take on that energy and allow it? Remember, in this work, we define processing as the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present when something less than love comes up. So to consciously bring that love present to those ancestors and whatever the traumas are that they're carrying, the darkness they're carrying, to help to process through it, to transmute that energy and free them from it. And I think we're all capable of doing that for each other, for our ancestors, and for the world.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. It just shows how connected we are to each other as well.
Definitely. definitely. And I find it interesting. The question comes here with the spots of light in the darkness behind you. This is kind of
Totally. Thank you, Michael.
delighted, honored.
We've got Corey next with a question.
All right, let's go for it.
Oh, you're muted.
Gonna undo your mute button.
Oh no, you are unmuted. I don't know why. We can't hear you. Oh, there's no sound coming through. You are unmuted.
Is your microphone working?
You may want to log off and come back in.
He's showing as muted to me.
No, she's just muted herself now, and now she's unmuted.
Oh.
herself. Yeah.
Come on, Corey. Oh,
You might want to
Hello,
come.
Gina. How are you, young lady?
hello.
Corey, if you go out and then come back in, it might reset it.
Reconnect it.
Connect it, yeah.
Sound.
I'm in the season of my son's anniversary of his passing on Monday, the 9th.
Mm.
So dealing with
Well-
that and ill health as well, disease, needing pharmaceuticals, and I don't know if they work, antibiotics, but yeah.
Well, make sure as you do that to put your healing work beside it. And that will
Okay.
enhance the support that the antibiotic gives you. And as far as your son's anniversary of his passing, I'll just connect with you and hold a space for him. We had a woman at Heartland, oh, this is about 20 years ago. And she had lost her son in a car accident some 30 years earlier. And she lived in Missouri, and the car wreck was somewhere out, or truck. He was actually a truck driver. And so she drove out to the site of the accident. And she found the shirt that he had been wearing. And it was like her prized possession. She kept it with her 20 years. And she was at Heartland at an intensive, and she was working on doing a mind shifter. And all of a sudden, her pen was kind of taken over. And her son started to write to her. And one of the things he said is, "Mom, please throw that shirt away. You're holding me locked to your darkness. Please throw that shirt away. Let me loose." So I'll certainly hold the space for you that any pain that could hold him, lock him to this level, that you can let loose of it so that he can be lifted up, and in turn he'll probably be able to send you an even deeper level of energy to lift you up.
Yeah, he does already, Michael. He does.
No. Cool. Sweet.
Yeah. Thank you, dear.
All right.
So we've got Corey back.
Corey, did you have a thought for us, young lady?
No, we still can't hear you.
We're not hearing you, Corey. No sound. I don't know why. Can you write what you want in the chat room?
If you put it in the chat, we'll read it out.
And Yinka did put that post in that I had sent her, and it's
Yes.
got a new a link to the latest "Why Is This Happening to Me Again" workshop, to the worksheet. If you have any questions, you can email it to Jeannie, and we'll do them on the radio show and send it back to you. Information about the app is there, and then there's this group called Hear My Voice Book Club. And we did a great worksheet a couple of weeks ago. So that worksheet is in there. You might want to give that a listen. And you'll find that's like a nice little package. If you've got somebody you want to share this work with, make a copy of that and just pass it on to them. And the resources are there to get a good deep start in how the forgiveness process works.
Could I just add to that, Michael? When I got
Yes.
to the 9th, the Saturday was the really heavy, painful day for me because he passed on a Saturday. And it
Right.
was like walking through treacle, and I couldn't really describe how I felt, but I got to the 9th on Monday, and I felt what a privilege to bring my son into this life, to witness his life, for him to bring his greatness and to witness his passing. And the scripture in my mind in the morning all day was, better is the day of one's death than the day of one's birth.
Mm.
So I kind of celebrated it, really.
Sweet. What a gift to give yourself and to give to him, rather than bringing your suffering.
Yeah, but it hurts. I acknowledge the hurt, and I'm learning, you know, to accept hurt, because if we don't express the hurt, then it comes out in our body, and it's coming out in my body,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. So accept the hurt, accept the hurt, articulate the hurt, and maybe acknowledge the hurt as well. So also there's some of that going on too.
One more suggestion.
Go on.
Apply forgiveness to the hurt.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Apply healing to the hurt. Absolutely.
Yep. Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Delighted.
Blessings.
We've got Corey that says, how can I find out what I carry from my parents and before?
If we're in an intensive, Corey, I would have a whiteboard behind me. Like, I'm going to just lift my camera here for a second. Normally, I stand in front of a whiteboard like that one right there when I teach, 4 foot by 8 foot. So if we're in intensive and you ask me that question, I would stand up and I go to the board, and in the largest letters that I could, I would write all of the above. My offering is use every tool you've got. That's what needs to be done, is every tool you've got. You've got many. And I noticed that each time we do a workshop, you pretty much ask the same question. Well, how do I handle this? And notice my answer is always the same. Use the tools you've got. You do a worksheet. You do the commitment. You do the codependence worksheet. You take every tool that you've got and apply it to clean that part of your mind up. So that would be my offering, is all of the above. Use every tool you've got. Breathe. Forgive. And you don't have to get into cognitive generational information. You know, oftentimes people want to figure it out. Oh, well, I want to figure it out. I want to know exactly what that was. You're not going to figure it out. That I call, in my codependence workshop, I call trying to figure it out the #1 pseudo solution of the non-being mind. The mind says, oh, if we could just figure it out, then everything will be okay. Well, you're never going to figure it out, but you can forgive it. You can apply forgiveness there. And it doesn't take cognitive awareness of those things. It just takes breathing and doing your work, and watch how life shifts around you. If there's a point where there's something that you need to become cognitively aware of, I've had experiences where 3 days later, something, I was working on a worksheet, and 3 days later, I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden, like, bingo, oh, that was it. I got it. So rather than pursuing, I need to know, I need all the details, I need to forgive. I need to forgive. I need to forgive. And then what I need to do is I need to forgive. Well, but I need to figure it. No, you don't need to figure it out. Apply the tool, softly, gently open and let go. And on deeper and deeper levels, the truth of you will show up in your physiology and in your world. Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
Somebody was asking about the purpose worksheet, which is it a primary purpose?
Yes.
To develop a viable, conscious spiritual body? Is that
Yeah,
one?
well, the primary that's what we talk about as primary purpose, and then the worksheet is about our secondary purpose. So my offering, when we do that workshop, purpose, personal power, and commitment, is the purpose of every human being is the same. Every human being on earth has exactly the same purpose, and that's to develop as a spiritual being and live in that spiritual body. That's our primary. Then our secondary purpose is, what's your unique function here on the earth? And most of us have been brainwashed by a commercial culture that wants us to be good commercial servants. So there's an exercise, and the worksheet's pretty much self-explanatory. The exercise is there in the worksheet, and just fill out those blanks and you'll have your secondary purpose. And then the idea is you start to align when you're going to make a choice about what you're going to do in your world, you align it. Is this on purpose? And so what we find is people, they've got things that they like to do, they enjoy doing, but when they discover their purpose, they don't support their purpose. And so they stop doing those things. And then there are things that people don't really like to do and don't really want to do, but they're in alignment with their purpose, so they do it. And what happens is when we bring all of that into alignment, energy systems don't bring through more power by efforting and trying. They bring through more power by aligning. And when you align with your purpose, a whole different level of power comes through you. That's why the workshop's called Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. And be committed to your purpose.
Because one thing I've realised doing this, the more work that I do, that the things that I want, I had a sense of this the other day, I'm no longer going to want it, because I want to clean out all the stuff why, like, if I've got a lack of belief in myself, once that's cleared out, I won't desire the thing that I wanted to feel like I've
So you feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it was quite an eye-opener. It kind of worried me for a moment of, oh, I'm not going to want all that anymore. what am I going to do?
Takes a lot of pressure off when you let go of those false wants.
Yeah.
Makes the game a lot easier.
Michael, if there's nobody asking, may I ask another question, please?
Go for it, please.
I can't help but reflect on a close friend who, for the longest part of her life, had defined many of her underlying issues, her core issues, maybe the absence of this father. Anyway, she was doing a lot of work on herself, and when at some point she made just this really sincere commitment, intention to say, I'm ready. And lo and behold, he knocked on the door. Now, he'd flown in over 12 hours to knock on this door after about 40 years, maybe 40, probably being significant.
Right.
But he was there in a sense, perhaps explaining himself. And it didn't feel like a forgive me. It felt more like a justification as to my whole story. And she was feeling this, I'm being manipulated again. I felt guilty my whole life. I could have been a better child to have had a father in my life. And yet again, at this, it seemed like an opportunity, considering she had made that sincere intention.
Sounds like a big opportunity.
Yes. And at the same time, she felt the old feeling of almost being manipulated into feeling bad if she didn't do something of the sort. Right. Anyway, so really there lies the reflection, the question reflection is it in that process, in that dealing, in that encounter, she did say, I forgive you. And the afterthought was, I felt better. He'd given me this manuscript of his whole life, and I'd given it back, and I felt better. So I felt better with the progress.
Right.
But I can't help feeling that there was an opportunity that something else could have been explored, or yes. How do you see this?
My take, what I hear, and correct me if I'm in error, what I hear is that she was in projection about these old feelings. The reason we feel is because we have thoughts moving in us. Feelings are nothing but shadows of thoughts. So my take would be in that circumstance, oh, he's trying to manipulate me again, and that's how I feel. I'd start to do some forgiveness work and explore the part of me that's still playing that manipulation game and clean that up in me. And I might arrive at a whole different experience of the event rather than just a reflection of the old unconscious dynamics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, what I could gather from that is that in that interaction, that encounter, that blessing that appeared at the door, let's put it that way, is that I
Right.
actually understood my mom better. I had a bit more compassion for my mom, and I could see what she had to put up with, in a sense.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds like a circumstance fraught with opportunity for another level of internal work and dealing with the generational patterns.
Right.
Cool.
And ancestral wisdom, as you said, ancient ancestral.
That's it. That's
Thank
what
you.
it takes. Cool. Beth?
Yes, thank you. Wanted to ask about our children, as my daughter is living exactly the same thing and I tried for years to stop it and nothing is working. So
I
what
understand.
can I do to help her and to stop it? Means
So-
I'm responsible for the repetition?
Well, no, what age is your daughter?
Yes, 15.
15. Okay. So she's young enough to be energetically impressionable in terms of what you do. So I would do two things. I would start to do some of the forgiveness worksheets on me and when that happened to me. And then as her mom, I do some worksheets on what you're seeing happen to her that you're saying is a repeating of the pattern. And as you clear that up, you'll become a whole different energy space for your daughter that she'll be able to turn to and gather healing from, rather than if you don't resolve it in you, she stands there because she has the same genes you do. Again, she's your unconscious mind hanging out again in true living color and Dolby sound. If you clean it up in you, you open the space for those things to heal in her. So the two approaches I take would be doing worksheets on myself when I was in those situations that I think I'm seeing happen to her. And then I do some worksheets around her. And you may even do a worksheet or two as though you were her. So put yourself, breathe yourself into her space and what you understand of what's going on for her, and do some forgiveness work. You might discover that what's going on for her is totally and completely different than it was for you, but you're seeing it through the lens of your own perception, so it's the same. But you might see that it's something quite different. So I do those three different things, and you'll probably find some significant changes happening both in your life and your daughter's life, and probably in your relationship with each other.
And I can work on the 3 points at the same time, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Simultaneously. Okay. Sure. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to.
All right. Delighted.
Yes.
And again, one of the ways to work on it is to do it in the app. So if you go to your app store on your phone and type in forgiveness Heartland Aramaic, you'll come up with our app. And then as you're doing it, if you have questions on every page in the app, you just push a button, type in your question, hit send. We'll get it. In the next radio show, Jeannie will read your question. We'll discuss it and answer it. And then she'll send you back a link so you can listen to the replay of that. So any questions you have, you can just send them to us right there through the app, and we'll get the answers back to you.
Thank you very much.
Delighted. All right. We'll be here for support.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question, but this is for everybody because I don't understand what it is of the AI on the Zoom, because that's why Corey can't unmute, because it requesting permission that I enable the AI, but I don't know what it is, so I can't accept.
I don't know what, maybe it's a new feature on Zoom.
It's a new feature.
But I don't know why everybody else would be okay, but not Corey. That's kind of strange.
But somebody else at the beginning had theirs on, but I didn't know what it was. But I didn't enable it. They just enabled it themselves.
Uh-huh.
It's an AI assistant helping take notes for this meeting.
Ah. I wasn't aware that it was there.
But I've not turned it on, but it's asked me to give Corey permission to. But if I turn it on, that means it's turned on in my settings as well.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. It's probably something you want to look at.
I shall take a look at it. Sorry, I can't enable it yet because I don't know what it is, what I'll be accepting.
So it's probably something that listens to the conversation and transcribes or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. So I'll take a look for next time.
Cool.
Sort it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Delight to be here.
Yes.
Come
and
play
thank
with
you,
us on the
Michael.
radio show. All right, blessings.
Yes, I'm going to leave some music to play for everybody out if anybody wants to listen.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you, Yinka. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yinka. Thank you, Michael.
You're most welcome. Deserving.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Yinka. Blessings.
And the next chapter
And
is
wholeness.
processing and going unconscious. And that'll be chapter 11.
Yeah. We're almost halfway there.
Yay.
All right, blessings. Bye-bye.
Right. I'm just going to mute us all.